This is the Capitol Rundown.
Basically, anybody who wanted something for their special project at home basically got it.
We'll work together. Like I said, I'm honored that we're taking this first step today in protecting children.
I think at this point, it's very difficult to envision a scenario where the former president's chief of staff at the time, Mark Meadows, does not end up giving public testimony.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Lauren Thompson. It was another big week in politics with a surprise hearing of the January 6th Commission and the continued reaction to the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, the case that had guaranteed a constitutional right to an abortion. Here in Lansing, the decision prompted Governor Gretchen Whitmer to ask the Michigan Supreme Court to consider her case immediately. She filed suit over a 1931 law that bans abortion in Michigan. The law is currently on hold because of a lower court injunction, which means abortion is still legal here for now. But the debate is splitting families, parties, and even county prosecutors. Some of them have pledged to enforce Michigan's ban on abortion if it takes effect, while others say they won't. Capitol Rundown reporter Josh Sanchez has both sides of the story.
Lauren, earlier this week, Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker says he would enforce the state's 1931 abortion statute. But Ingham County Prosecutor Carol Seaman stands by her promise to not to.
That it's my obligation to protect the safety and well-being of our community, and that, in my opinion, to prosecute providers who are providing a necessary medical service to persons is not what I want to stand for.
Ingham County Prosecutor Carol Seaman says she was mortified as a prosecutor and as a woman when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which allowed trigger laws banning abortion in several states to go into effect. On Monday, Attorney General Dana Nessel reminded Michiganders that the state's 1931 abortion ban is the subject of a temporary injunction in a case between her office and Planned Parenthood of Michigan, making it unenforceable by her office and every county prosecutor in the state. However, attorney David Coleman, who's representing Kent County and Jackson County prosecutors, says otherwise. The injunction does not affect enforcement on the county level.
What they're trying to do is bootstrap in our clients, like the two prosecutors we represent, to say, well, they're bound by this injunction also. That's ridiculous. That's a joke. Our clients are not parties to that case. They are not working in concert with the Attorney General. They're not an agent for the Attorney General. They're not an employee.
Seaman says she believes both arguments have some merit, but with the level of discretion prosecutors have, she's steadfast on not enforcing the nearly 100-year-old statute. As for the Supreme Court decision, she says a lot of uncertainty is ahead for cases concerning access to birth control and even same-sex marriage.
We run the risk right now in our United States Supreme Court of losing some fundamental rights that we take for granted.
Now, Jackson County Prosecutor Jerry Jarzinga says he will also enforce the 1931 abortion ban, saying, quote, if the police submit a report for review, I will approach it the same way we do when any request is made to review a case for charging a state law violation. So there is a lot riding on the Michigan Supreme Court's decision on that abortion ban, and we'll have to see where the future is for abortion access in the state. Lauren?
Thank you, Josh. But Michigan's battle over abortion isn't limited to the courts. The fight is also taking place at the state capitol and in the streets. In the legislature, there's a bill that would update the 1931 ban so it would be enforceable in the post-Roe v. Wade era. The Protection at Conception Act calls for a sentence of up to 10 years in prison and a $100,000 fine for anyone who performs an abortion. And on the streets, people continue to gather petition signatures for the Michigan Right to Reproductive Freedom Initiative. Now, if approved by voters, it would enshrine the right to have an abortion in the Michigan Constitution. The group behind the drive says it has the 425,000 signatures it needs, but will spend the next week getting extra signatures before the deadline on July 11th. Well, coming up next here on The Rundown, we hear from two of the Republicans who want to be Michigan's next governor. We'll be right back. We're now less than a month away from the August primary, and the big question is, who will Republicans choose to run against Governor Gretchen Whitmer? Candidate Kevin Rinke did an interview with Rundown reporter Josh Sanchez last week to tell us why it should be him.
I think I'm either going to win one of two ways, Josh, by attrition or by popular vote, but I'll take either one.
We did have a poll come out showing that around 57% of folks in the Tri-County area are undecided right now. So what's the strategy to get those folks onto your campaign?
No, I don't think that poll or the timing of it really is uncommon. We've had a lot of national level news that's distracting people, but we're implementing a plan. We're running a full scale campaign and we're reaching out to people digitally, direct mail. We're on TV, we're on cable, we're calling folks, we're knocking doors, all the things that are going to lead us to victory come August 2nd.
Now, is there a certain part of Michigan that you're tending to have a higher success compared to other spots?
Actually, I am really heartened by the fact that everywhere we go, people are very receptive to the message that I'm bringing and the effort that we're putting into this campaign, because really I'm here to serve them. And they see that when we talk and they support it with their actions and they're spreading the word. And everywhere you go in Michigan, you're starting to see Rinke signs all over. I'm really proud of it. Since we kicked off our campaign, November 22nd, we've had a plan and we're implementing that plan and we continue to review and update that plan. And we're the only candidate whose numbers are continuing to grow. We're going to peak at the right time. We're going to win the primary and we're going to carry that momentum into September when we face off against Gretchen Whitmer.
And are you hoping to get a endorsement from former President Trump as we go into the general election in November?
I think that any candidate, be it Republican or Democrat, would welcome the endorsement of an ex-president. And I'll look forward to that endorsement when the president deems it's appropriate.
Meanwhile, candidate Tutor Dixon made a campaign stop at the Capitol this week where she was joined by half a dozen Republican state representatives. But this wasn't about their endorsements. Instead, they talked about support for a bill to keep drag queens out of schools. The lawmakers say they're not aware of any schools that have ever brought drag queens in, but they referenced a joke made by Attorney General Dana Nessel, and they point to drag queen events that happen outside of schools. So they say they want to stop this practice before it ever begins.
Schools should focus on the basics. Schools should focus on teaching our students how to think, not what to think. They shouldn't be used for political or cultural ideology.
We'll work together. Like I said, I'm honored that we're taking this first step today in protecting children, and I'm thankful to be here with these brave legislators.
The lawmakers thanked Dixon for helping publicize the issue and suggested she would be part of a work group to help come up with similar legislation. Well, you'll have the chance to hear from 4 of the Republican gubernatorial candidates this week. Tutor Dixon, Ryan Kelly, Kevin Rinke, and Garrett Saldana will debate on Wednesday night at 7. You can watch that right here on this station. Ralph Rebant, though, did not poll high enough to qualify. Well, when we come back, we'll talk to the Dean of the Capitol Press Corps, so stay tuned for Tim's take on This Week in Michigan Politics. Well, it was another big week in Michigan politics with the governor's race and a new budget. Here now to break it all down for us are Jorma Duran and Capitol correspondent Tim Skubik.
Well, it's time to get updated politically here in the state of Michigan, and nobody better than this guy right here, Tim Skubik. Tim, always great to see and talk to you. Last time I did, we were talking about Perry Johnson. He was trying to figure out how he can get his name on a write-in ballot. Something was going on. Well, now he's flat out saying, no, I'm not going to run.
He did the math and it didn't add up. Look at Perry Johnson has made his millions of dollars by being a numbers guy, being data driven, and he put the numbers in the machine, and the answer that came out the other side was he could spend upwards of $15 million and he would only have a 34% chance of winning. He's a pretty sharp guy. He could do the math there and figured out that that was not a good investment. So as he told me the other day, quote, my wife won this battle. She never wanted him to run in the first place, but maybe I'll win the next battle, which could be, and you gotta like this, he might go out to Iowa and actually try to run for president.
The budget. So it looks like Governor Whitmer and the GOP-led legislature have come up with a deal. I'm told it's the largest budget ever.
Ever. ever. $76 billion. They had more money than they knew what to do with. And there was some controversy, but there always is. But look, this is an election year. And if you tell politicians we've got a bundle of money and we need to do something with it, they did. And they spent it on a lot of stuff. The two items that I particularly loved among all the pork barrel spending, there was a ton of it, was $2 million for a curling court in Traverse City. A curling court, okay, and $14 million for a ferry to get people from the mainland to Beaver Island. $14 million, okay, and those are only the tip of the iceberg. Basically, anybody who wanted something for their special project at home basically got it, but what they didn't do, and here's the one that really affects everybody at home who's watching, they did not get around to cutting your taxes in one form or another. There were 4 proposals on the table. The governor had her side, the Republicans had their side, and the two sides never met in the middle to find a compromise. Now, theoretically, they can work, the governor and the two legislative leaders and others can negotiate over the summer, and if they come up with a deal to cut taxes, then they can call the lawmakers back from the campaign trail, they could ratify it, and then just before the election, voila, you could get some money back, which could help the politicians get reelected, which at the end of the day, for many of them, is what it's all about.
Exactly. Voila. All righty. Tim, always great to see and talk to you. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Up next, we head to Washington, D.C. to talk about that surprise hearing by the January 6th Commission this week. Stay with us. Welcome back. The committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol held a surprise hearing Tuesday, and a former White House aide made some claims about former President Donald Trump. Rashad Hudson joins us now with more on who that witness was.
Good morning. That surprise witness turned out to be a former staffer who shared explosive, minute-by-minute accounts of what was happening inside and outside the White House on January 6th.
The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now."
Cassidy Hutchinson shared new details with the House January 6th committee about former President Trump's actions on the day a mob of people stormed the Capitol.
The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel.
She also testified that the former president threw dishes multiple times, including after learning about an interview given by former Attorney General Bill Barr.
I first noticed there was ketchup dripping down the wall, and there's a shattered porcelain plate.
Leading up to the riot, the committee said the D.C. Metropolitan Police spotted multiple people with guns.
I got 3 men walking down the street in fatigue while carrying AR-15.
Hutchinson said she was disgusted when Trump tweeted that former Vice President Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done.
It was unpatriotic. It was un-American. We were watching the Capitol building get defaced over a lie.
And former President Trump responded to Hutchinson's testimony in real time on his social media platform, calling it false. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson, back to you.
When the president did respond shortly after that hearing, he said he hardly knows Hutchinson and called her a phony, a leaker, and bad news. He also called her testimony about grabbing the steering wheel fake and the food throwing false. So what are the experts saying about this shocking testimony? A local political analyst breaks it all down next. We continue our coverage now of this week's January 6th committee hearing. I caught up with a local political analyst to get his take. Listen in as he talks about the key takeaways from the testimony.
This was a bad day for the former president and his immediate allies, the folks that were closest to him on January 6th. In particular, the revelation that the former president knew that many of the people that were coming to his event were armed. And that, he intended to go to the Capitol with them anyway. That looks very, very bad. So I think that's key takeaway number one. The other thing I think that's going to be very interesting to see is what sort of subpoenas and additional testimony this generates. I think at this point, it's very difficult to envision a scenario where the former president's chief of staff at the time, Mark Meadows, does not end up giving public testimony in front of this committee. He came out of this hearing looking very, very bad.
Some of what was testified to about the president grabbing the steering wheel and the actions in the limo were a hearsay account. Does that affect the credibility of that story at all, in your opinion?
I mean, potentially, but this is not a court of law, right? It's a congressional committee. And so, there's not an evidentiary standard that has to be met in terms of a criminal prosecution around that. That being said, I think that the other thing to keep in mind about that is that that's probably, from a constitutional and sort of governance perspective, the least important part of the story. Whether or not the former president tried to grab the steering wheel in the presidential limousine or not is sort of immaterial to the overall narrative of January 6th.
So what would you say the biggest bombshell that we heard was?
It's the weapons, right? It's the president explicitly trying to give orders to remove the magnetometers from this event so that people with weapons could come in and proceed to the Capitol. That's the biggest bombshell out of this. That starts looking more and more like an attempt to overthrow the government.
Well, if you're interested in getting more Michigan political news in your inbox, we have just the thing. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the symbol on your screen right now. It will take you to the sign-up page, or you can head to WLNS.com/newsletters. Well, that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown. We hope to see you again next weekend.